Okay, Be'ezrat Hashem, Naaseh V'Natzliach. I want to welcome you to another session of our Beacon Tower Hollandale Lunch and Learn, as we continue our learning of the weekly Torah portion, the Parashat Shavua. This week's Parashat is Parashat Ekev. Before we get started, I'd like to give an honorable mention to my good friend Judah Mendel and to Joseph Dornbush and the Dornbush family for putting this thing together, allowing us to use the space, bringing the food for the lavish spread that we have over here for the lunch and learn, and for attending the class for so many years. Hashem varech otchem, sameach otchem. Bezrat Hashem, that you have health, wealth, success, bracha v'atzlacha in all you do, and besorot tovot bimhera, bimhera, bimhera. Okay, we are in Sefer Devarim, also known as Mishneh Torah, which is the review of Moshe Rabbeinu of all the happenings of Am Yisrael up until the time that they were in the desert. So while he's recounting the history of what has passed, since Moshe Rabbeinu is right now in the midst of his 36-day farewell speech, and he gives instructions and warnings and practical advice to Am Yisrael to learn from their past mistakes, as well as practical advice for the future as they enter Eretz Yisrael. Because once they are in Israel, they have an additional amount of mitzvot that they will be responsible to perform. In Perek Yud Aleph and Perek Chaf, between Chaf and Chaf Bet, we come upon one of the parashiyot of Shema Yisrael. So Shema Yisrael consists of 3 parashiyot. Ve'ahavta. After that, it's Ve'haya. And then the last one is the Parashat Tzitzit. In this week's parasha, ironically, last week's parasha we had Shema. This week's parasha we have the parasha of Ve'haya. The Parashat Ve'haya also includes over there, besides the fact that it talks about Tefillin, in Pasuk Chaf and Chaf Aleph, it talks about mezuzot. Uchtaftam al mezuzot betecha u'isharecha. That you should write these parashiyot, which is the first 2 parashiyot of Shema, which is again V'ahavta et Hashem b'chol levavecha v'chol nefshecha v'chol modecha, and Ve'haya im shamua tishmeu el mitzvotai. Those 2 parchments should be posted on top of the mezuzot, the doorpost, betecha v'isharecha, in your homes and in your gates. Why? The following pasuk tells us, Le'ma'an yirbu yemechem v'yimei benechem, that you'll have long life, you and your children, ala adama shenishba Hashem l'avotechem, on the land that Hashem promised to you and to your forefathers, latet lehem kima shamayim ha'aretz, to give it to them as inheritance, as long as the heavens are above the earth. So in other words, we have over here a commandment to put a mezuzah in our doorpost, and we also have a nice little bonus with it. It gives us long life, and it promises us to live in the land of Israel. So there's so many things, in Sefer Devarim, so many things are mentioned. It's like, if you go to Parashat Ekev, almost every 2-3 pesukim is a different concept, another story, another event. And sometimes we glance over certain things, and this is really a real obscure pasuk that maybe we're so accustomed to knowing about the mezuzah, or we hear about the mezuzah, or we say about Shema every day, that we don't really take the time to learn it. So I thought today would be an interesting time to actually take those 2 small pesukim, or even that one small pasuk, to take that particular pasuk and learn about the mezuzah and the importance of the mezuzah. So let's get started, to jump right into it. So what is the purpose of the mezuzah? So we have, milta de b'dichuta. It's always good to have a little bit of a joke in the middle of a drasha. Like that, we get all the yetz hara out, and then we can continue to serious learning. So a milta b'dichuta that I heard about, what's the purpose of mezuzah? It's the goyim thing that's where we keep our lease. It's a little, it's like a little tube that's where we keep the lease, or the instruction manual, or the warranty to the house. Another thing, another Another thing that we heard about the mezuzah is that if you're ever lost in a neighborhood and you want to go and see how, if you need any help, all you have to do is go pass by the doors and look to see where's the mezuzah. You can knock on the door, and definitely you'll find somebody there that'll be able to help you. But in reality, back to the class, the mezuzah is a sign, it's a tangible sign, it's something physical that we put on our doors to help us remember God. One of the things that is very, very important is to remember God, to have God in our lives every single day, every single moment, to stay connected. This is what the tzaddikim were always in tune to. We always hear about the Baal Shem Tovs and dveikut, the Hasidim like dveikut. What's dveikut? To cling onto Hashem. How do you cling onto Hashem? To constantly be connected and feel that Hashem is there. So the mezuzah helps us when we leave the house. We look at the mezuzah, it brings us back. Oh yeah, God. Over there we have the Parashat, we have the Shin over there, we have the Shem Shakai over there. So it's a tangible sign to remembering God. Also, when you go out into the world and when you come back from the outside world, it serves as a reminder of Hashem's oneness, because in the house there's a certain feeling that you have with God, and outside, when you're out there doing the day-to-day affairs, whether it's school, work, fun, anything that you want to do, God is in the house and also outside of the house. This mezuzah also helps you focus. When you leave the house, you remember, I'm going out there. I have to be the way of God, the ways of the Torah. I have to make sure that I'm performing mitzvot. It's like it helps you right before. You have almost like a moment where you're speaking to yourself and you're saying, I'm leaving right now. Let me make sure that I'm in the names of, that I remember Hashem, that I go in the ways of Hashem, the ways of the Torah, the ways of the mitzvot, to stay focused, and you kiss it. And when you come back, it's also, you come back and make sure to say, I survived the outside world. I survived this whole, this outing that I was in, and now I'm coming into my house to remember that this is a house of God. This is, as a matter of fact, that God is the master of this house. I am a guest in His home. Hashem is the one that gives us everything. He gives us our lives, our health, our money, our family, our children, the food that's on the table. We're in God's world. Even our home belongs to God. So when you put a mezuzah on it, and you come back home, you know that this is God's house, and I'm coming to be a guest in the house of Hashem. Now, Rabbeinu Bachye goes a little bit deeper, and he says it's also to serve as a reminder for three things. It's to remind us that we have amitut hanevuah. In other words, we believe in the truth of the prophecies. He says that the purpose of the mezuzah is also to believe in chidush haolam, that the world constantly renews itself. And also the third reason that we have a mezuzah is that there's hashgacha pratit, that there's a divine providence, that Hashem is constantly looking out for all of us. So if Rabbeinu Bachye took it to a deeper level, and he says that amitut hanevuah, why should we, the truthfulness of the prophecies, which is what? That Yetziat Mitzrayim, that Hashem said He will take us out of Mitzrayim, and He did take us out of Mitzrayim. And we also know that at the end of the days, that at the end of the days, He's also going to be taking us out of our exile. So we believe, when we touch the mezuzah, we believe that Hashem, the prophecy that Hashem saved us in Egypt, saved us gave us our first redemption. He too will again also give us the final redemption. The second part that he says, Chidush Olam, the world constantly renews itself and Hashem is ever present in it. A lot of people are of the opinion that Hashem created the world, left it on autopilot, and now He's somewhere else in a different part of the universe. We as Jews, when we touch that Mezuzah, we know Hashem, every single minute Hashem is in this world and creating and is in control of every little big thing that's within it. That's one of the things that we have to believe when we're touching the mezuzah. And the last one, the hashgacha pratit, the divine providence, is that we have, which is the core. It's one of the pillars, the foundation of Judaism, which is the emunah and the Torah. That Hashem, we have faith that everything is for the best. That Hashem controls everything, and everything that He does is actually is 100% calculated and by design. Rabbeinu Bachya took it really, really far. And these are all very lofty ideas. However, the most popular and most simple explanation of why we have a mezuzah on our doors is, it's actually a Rashi Tevot to the name that's on the mezuzah. If you ever saw a mezuzah scroll, you'll see on the front of it a Shin and a Dalet and a Yud, which is one of God's names. And it stands for, it's an acronym for Shomer Dlatot Israel. He protects the doors of Israel. Now, because the Shin and the Dalet and Yud protects the doors of Israel, many rabbis and many Rishonim and Achronim have revealed to us what is the Segula. What is the Segula? What are the special merits that a person can merit to when he has a mezuzah in his doorstep, in his doorpost, as especially when it is mehudad. So it says that any person who has mezuzah on his doorpost, nishmar mimezikin, he's protected from the evil spirits or from the evil forces that are out there in the world. Afilu me'amashchit, even from the mashchit. What's the mashchit? Whenever there is a plague, a magifam, there's a certain angel, the angel of death, right? The grim reaper, that he has the authority, or he's got the permission to go and kill people. It says over here that even though that you have menacing angels, and the mezuzah protects you from those menacing angels, but it goes as far as to say, afilu me'amashchit, even from the grim reaper, even from when there's an opening for death in the world in regards to, in the form of a plague, in the form of a sickness, in the form of whatnot, the mezuzah can protect you from that as well. It's very interesting, because nowadays that we live in the time of COVID and all this virus, it's always good to have a good mezuzah at the front of your door. Furthermore, in the Zohar, in Parashat Bo, it says that the Kadosh Baruch Hu, that God, Katav Shmo, it says, the Kadosh Baruch Hu says, Ktov Shemi, write my name at your doorstep, Vesim lepachtecha, and put it at your front door. Vata teshev betoch habayit, and you sit inside the house. Vani yashev lachutz, and I'll sit outside. Etzel petchecha lishmor otcha. Hashem says, write my name on your doorpost. I will sit outside. You sit inside, and I will protect you. Could you imagine? The Zohar is letting you know that Hashem is saying, as long as you put a mezuzah outside of your door, He's standing right outside your door protecting you. Now, as a matter of fact, there's a custom to say, I didn't bring my siddur. There's a custom to say, Ki malacha v'tzavelach leshomecha b'chol derechecha, Adonai yishmor tzetecha v'acha ma'atav adolam. There's a custom to say that a lot of times people have a thing that they say by the mezuzah. Some people say Shema right by the time they leave. Some people say some certain pesukim. But one of the pesukim that says, Ki malacha v'tzavelach leshomecha b'chol derechecha, because Hashem is going to command the angels to protect you on your goings and your comings. Hashem is going to protect you when you go out into the world and when you come back from the world, from now and forever after. That's one of the pesukim that a lot of people say when they leave the door. They stand there and they take a moment. The mezuzah is not something where you just like kiss it and go. It's actually a place where you take a moment and you focus. It's again, everything is about kavanah. Everything is about intention. Anything that's done without intention rarely counts. If you're just doing something robotically, it's rarely going to count. As a matter of fact, I saw it brought. I'll read it right here. It says, mechanical observance of the mitzvot does not guarantee protection. In other words, we do have a lot of things that offer us protection, such as tefillin, such as mezuzot. But if you're not putting it on with, if you're not performing the mitzvah with the kavanah, it's not the same. So for example, when we put on tefillin, the proper thing to do it, and for people that don't know what kavanah they're supposed to have, it's very easy. You can just open up any sidur, the L'Shem Yichud before. There's a whole L'Shem Yichud, and then there's a whole little paragraph that tells you what's the intention you're supposed to have right before you do the mitzvah. In Sephardic Sidurim, you find it almost before every single beracha or mitzvah or prayer. If you pay attention to the one tefillin, it says, I'll just paraphrase, that I am putting on my tefillin shel yad, that is corresponding to the heart that is connected, that is according to the correlating to the desires of the heart, and I am putting the tefillin shorosh that is connected the moach, and this is where the neshama lives. So I know that I'm putting here against the desires, here against where the neshama sits, and also against the bad thoughts that I'm having, and then I start to the person might have, and then you start to wrap tefillin. You have a kavanah of why you're putting on the tefillin yad with tefillin shorosh. Furthermore, when you go into the mezuzah, right? When you put a mezuzah, you go and you say, you know what? I'm putting a mezuzah because God is the master, and He's the master of this house. Let's say. And by doing that, you have the kavanah that Hashem is the master of this house. This is a house that is run by the laws of the Torah, by the laws of Hashem. You put the kavanah, now it counts. But or when you're going in and you're going out and you have those kavanot, it's a lot more than when you're just passing by it and have zero kavanah, zero attention. You're not activating anything. You're not taking advantage of any spiritual powers that are available to you, or spiritual protection that's available to you at that time. So that's what he's saying over here. So when you sit over there and you say, Hashem protects me when I go out into the world, and when I come back, you're going out there with protection. You activated that. How? Touching the mezuzah, saying that pasuk. Now, this protection is for both inside the house and outside the house. So when you're leaving, it's from all the world's dangers. When you go out into the world, who knows what's out there? People are on the road. Now we have viruses. Also, not only that, you want to be protected at your workplace. You want to be protected, wherever you go. Not necessarily just from dangers, but also they should protect your finances, protect your health, protect your family. Overall protection. And then when you're coming back to the house and you're kissing the mezuzah, you want to put the mezuzah saying, Hashem, thank you for protecting me. And now that I'm going into my house, that all the negativity from the world doesn't enter my house. Because sometimes you go out there into the world and what happens? You hear this one thing, you see this other thing, all these negative things that are not Torah-based or go around the rules, not the rules, but the Jewish thought, the Jewish hashkafa. You come into the house, Hashem, whatever I experienced outside, leave it outside, and now let me just come back safely to my home, safely to my sanctuary of kedusha. Furthermore, Hazal tell us any person who has tefillin on his hands and his head, and tzitzit that he's wearing, and a mezuzah on his doorstep, it says, muhzak shelo yichta. He says a person like that has a superior protection. Anybody who's putting on tefillin during the day, he's walking around with a tzitzit, and he has a mezuzah on his doorstep, he's got extra protection. And we get that from the pasuk, Choneh malach Hashem saviv lir'av vayechaletzem. That Hashem sends angels around the God-fearing Jew. In other words, a God-fearing Jew, he put on tefillin, he's wearing a tzitzit, he has a mezuzah in his home, he's walking around with angels protecting him. And not only that, vayechaletzem, if he does get into trouble, he gets rescued, vayechaletzem. That's incredible, if you think about it, because some people are on automatic. Well, like, yeah, I wear my I put on tefillin, yeah, I kiss the mezuzah, yeah, I have talit. But are you activating the power that's within it? Do you understand that you're putting on tefillin and you're able to activate with the kavanah, that you're protecting your heart and your desires and your minds and your thoughts, and the tzitzit that I'm wearing is keneged the taryag mitzvot, that it represents the 613 mitzvot, and every time that I look at it, it reminds me of the Torah. And the mezuzah is that the king, Hashem is the king of my house, the king of the world. Are you activating all those intentions so you can have that protection? Because if you're not, as it says over here, that mechanical observance does not guarantee protection against sin. Mechanical observance does not guarantee protection against sin. So imagine, you do the exact same thing. One comes with protection, one doesn't. It all depends on your kavanah. Furthermore, the Shulchan Aruch says, I quote it over here, says that not only does it serve as a protection, both inside of the house or outside of the house, but it also offers long life to the person and to his life and to his children. I'll read it from the book. Shulchan Aruch, mitzvat aseh lichtov Parashat Shema vayayim Shama, the first two parashiyot of Shema, and to put him in the entrance of the house. And he said, v'tzarich lizaher meod. You have to be very, very careful with this, the Shulchan Aruch says. Because anybody who's very careful with putting these two parashiyot on the front of his door, yarichu yamav v'yimei banav, long life to you and to your children. And if a person is not careful with having a kosher mezuzah on his door, his life will get shortened. And he brings the pasuk of where he draws it from. And that's and if you recall, when we read the pasuk, that you should write these parashiyot, these mezuzot, on your doorposts and on your gates or your entrances. And the following pasuk, the pasuk that follows it, is leman yirbu imechem, that you'll have long life. So anytime that there's a pasuk that's adjacent to the one before it, there's a correlation. It's by design. So the reason why it talks about long life is because the mezuzah has the power to give you and your children long life, and even more so, it says, "V'merchem al ha'adama." And not only that, long life where? On the land that God promised you, the land of Israel. So this is very ironic because it's connected to Moshe and the coming, and Am Yisrael coming to Eretz Yisrael. So, just to tie in Moshe and the parasha into what we have going on over here. So we know, if you ever looked at a mezuzah, it's very interesting. The mezuzah has God's name. It says, it's Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, Hashem. Then it says Elokim, and then Yud-Kei Vav-Kei again, right? But here we're going to get Hashem, Elokeinu, Hashem, right? Now, it says, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Now, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem, if we take those Hashem Elokeinu Hashem, and we take them, and instead of, and we take each letter, and we go to the letter that's right next to it. In other words, Yud Kei Vav Kei turns to be Yud, turns into Chav. The Hey turns into a Vav. The Vav turns into a Zayin, and the Hey turns into a Vav. It spells out a holy name of God called Kuzu. And then if you take the word Elokim, right? The Aleph becomes Bet, the Lamed becomes Mem, the Hey becomes Vav, the Yud becomes Haf, the Elokeinu, the Nun becomes Samech, and the Vav becomes Zayin. It comes to the holy name Bemuchsaz, and then again Kuzu. So you have Hashem, Elokeinu, Hashem turns into Kuzu, Bemuchsaz, Kuzu. What is that name? Well, those are three holy names of God that are very, very powerful. And why are they powerful? Because they have the numerical value of 213. If you add all those letters together, it's 213. Now, which comes to the numeric Yud Gimel Resh, Yagor. Now, why is this important? How is this connected to the mezuzah? Right before the Jewish people entered Eretz Yisrael, they fought a very big war. They fought the war against the two giants, Sichon and Og. Now, Sichon and Og, if you take the numerical, they represent a certain type of kelipa in the world, a certain type of evil influence in the world. And in order for Am Yisrael to go into Eretz Yisrael, they needed to defeat these two giants and the evil influence that they had in the world and that they represented in the world. And who was the one that killed both of them? We know Moshe Rabbeinu went to war with Og, and then we saw that the Jewish people also went to war with the Sichon, and they were able to win those wars. But again, the Kelipa that is connected to them, if you take the word Sichon ve'og, and you add the numerical value, it's 213. So we see that the 213 of God's names of protection from the mezuzah, as well as the 213 of Sichon ve'og, have a correlation, 213 and 213. And how is that possible? And why is that relevant to the mezuzah? Because if you look at the map of Israel, right at the entrance, you know the mezuzah, we hang it on the upper third part of the door. If you look at the map of Israel, on the upper third part where they came in from the side of Jordan, the entrance that they came to Eretz Yisrael, that's exactly where they fought. That's exactly where Sichon and Og were defeated. Why? Because that was the mezuzah of Eretz Yisrael. That was exact placement of the mezuzah of Eretz Yisrael. So they put over there the 213 that is typically on the mezuzah to defeat the evil kelipot of 213 of Sichon and Og. Which is very interesting. Why? Because we could add to that, I think we've mentioned this several times before, but we know that all of the tribes went into Israel except for 2.5 tribes. Gad, Reuven, and Chatzi Menashe. So we have 2.5 tribes that stayed on the outside of Eretz Yisrael for the various reasons. One, they said that they wanted to, the grass was greener on this side, better pasturing grounds for their animals. It was, they preferred it for their livestock, so on and so forth. We know the story that Moshe went to agree to it. And the famous midrash that we mentioned last time is that we know that the Jews, each tribe had a flag. And on that flag, we had a Yud K Vav K configuration of God's name. In other words, God's name for mercy, Yud K Vav K, has 12 different configurations. It could be Yud K Vav K, it could be Hey Vav and Hey Yud. You could boggle it 12 different ways. And each tribe had their own flag, and each flag had their own Yud K Vav K configuration. So now we have 2.5 tribes that didn't go to Israel. So if we take Yud K Vav K, what is the numerical value of that? 26. 26 plus 26 is 52. That's for the 2 tribes. If we take half of a tribe, half of 26 is what? 13. If you add up 52 and 13, you get 65. 65 is the numerical value of mezuzah. What's mezuzah? Gad, Menashe, Gad, Reuven, Chatzi Menashe. The reason why they were outside of Israel, right at the entrance, they were the mezuzah to Eretz Yisrael. The 2.5 tribes exactly were the mezuzah to Eretz Yisrael. Furthermore, we see that Moshe Rabbeinu was buried over there also, in front of Baal Peor, in that same area as well. Why? Because we said he also served as a mezuzah. Which what? We said he was going to be a protection, that anytime Baal Peor wants to come up into Eretz Yisrael, he's going to say, no. We still have the protection of Moshe Rabbeinu. Not only that, he was almost like the bodyguard to the entrance of Eretz Yisrael. So we have something very important to protect. Something very important that protects us. Something very important that protects our homes as well as Eretz Yisrael. We see that the concept of mezuzah, even to the land of Israel, protects the door of Israel, even Israel itself, the 2.5 tribes corresponding to mezuzah. Moshe Rabbeinu. We also have the 213. Was it 213? Yeah, the 213 with the Kelipot of Sichon and Og that were with the names of God on the mezuzah all over there. So we see there's a concept of even the mezuzah at the entrance of Eretz Yisrael. Similarly, like we have the mezuzah in our homes. The rabbis tell us that we have to deal with this area of our door with a lot of kavod, with a lot of respect. When you're the doors that have a mezuzah, we should treat it with such respect and be very careful not to have any dirty water next to the mezuzah. We have to honor that space, make sure that there's no garbage that are sitting next to it, or broken things that are broken. Sometimes we put a lot of things by the front door because we're going to take it out. Like we're going to take out the garbage, we're going to take out the older boxes, something that broke, we put it aside. Make sure that it's not by the mezuzah, a few feet away, or take it out right away so it's not parked over there. You have to protect that area. Because when you honor that space, it draws down a tremendous amount of protection from the heavens. That's why it's very, very important to have kosher mezuzot. They tell us that we have to check our mezuzot every 3.5 years. It's very, very, for various reasons. For heat, for moisture. Sometimes there's letters that disappear for whatever reason. You got to make sure that you have a kosher mezuzah, because if you don't have a kosher mezuzah, 713 letters, you don't have that protection. Imagine if a person is missing a letter, or if it's not kosher, or you took the word of the person in the store that it's a kosher mezuzah and didn't take it to a scribe to double check it. You might have a door that's not protected. You might have a home that's not protected. You don't have Hashem sitting outside of the door protecting the doors. You don't have a scroll that's protecting you from the kelipot, or from the mezikin, or from the mashchit. Could you imagine? So if you don't have the proper protection in the front of the house is not protected. If you don't have the proper protection, or a kosher mezuzah, let's say by the bedroom, there's constantly, the couples are going to be fighting. That's why if you notice, a lot of people, when they go to the rabbis, rabbis, we're having issues. We have issues with in our shlom bayit, we're not getting along. Right away, what did the rabbi say? Check the mezuzot. Check the mezuzot. You always say that, like I always try to understand, why do the rabbis keep asking you to go check the mezuzot? So it's very interesting. I actually found a source for it. Rabbi Yoram Aberger's Mesilot el Nefesh, it says over there, so there's a gematria that has to do with the mezuzot. If you look at the Yetzer Hara, he is known as here. The Satan, the devil, if you take the gematria of the Satan and you count the word as well, which is called a kolen, it comes out to the same numerical value of the word hanachash, the snake. Now, he has an assistant. And one of his assistants is called Riv. In Hebrew, it means fight. And if you take the word nachash, which is snake, which is 358, and you take the word riv, which is fight, so you got the snake and the word fight, and you put them together, it spells out the word rasha, which is 570, which means that when you have the snake and his assistant called riv, fight, come together, what is it? It comes together to the word Rasha, the Gematria Rasha, which we know that the pasuk that says, Va'alav, that David Amelech says, Tzofe Rasha uvakesh la'amito. What's Tzofe Rasha? That there's the snake or the Yetzer Hara. What does he do? He's evil and he's constantly looking how to kill an individual. In which way? Not just physically, but spiritually as well. For example, how does this work? This menacing angel stands outside of the house or outside of the door that's not protected. The door is not protected. He has permission to be there. So he stands there and he sees that there's an opportunity to cause a fight. And what does he do? Tzofeh b'bayit, he looks at the house, and what does he do? He starts to stir up trouble between the couple. And it causes it to the point that they fight to the point that what? That he kills them spiritually. Because you know when you fight, a lot of things happen. When you fight, you know, it causes anger. Anger causes a lot of different, you know, all of a sudden it's not the person himself. All these different spirits go inside a person and they start controlling him. And all of a sudden he starts to forget his Torah. Now he's sinning, now he's transgressing. Now all the shefa that's supposed to come into the world to him is gone. All the keli, all the vessel that he had, that he's been, preparing for a beracha, this vessel of blessing that he's waiting for. Now the kaas or the meriva, either the anger or the fight causes it to break, and now all that is gone. So all of a sudden, what is he doing? He's trying to destroy everything. He's trying to destroy the peace in the home. He's trying to destroy the blessing in the beracha. He's trying to make sure that he's trying to destroy the Torah learning that the person did. He's trying to destroy the peace in the home. Why? Because he can. Because there's no mezuzah protecting the couple from that. That's why when the rabbis say, go check your mezuzot, because there's a chance that mamash, that there is a mezuzah that is not protecting the couple in their own bedroom. However, the flip side of that is that if you do have a mezuzah, then what? It does protect you against all that. You don't come to those situations because the mezuzah protects you. Because the mezuzah has the power to eliminate this kelipa, this shell called riv. I thought that was very, very interesting because for years I was wondering why rabbis are always saying, check your mezuzot. There's a story about a mezuzah. I'll share it with you. There was a famous rabbi from Israel that would go to America on a yearly basis, and he would collect charity or donations for his yeshiva. Throughout the years, by going to California, he started to befriend some doctors. And, you know, every year he would come and visit them. One year, he said, you know what, I'm going to see the doctors. Let me bring him a gift. And what's the best gift that you can give a Jew? Judaica. You know, Judaica store, things, divrei kedusha. So he says, you know what I'll do? I'll buy beautiful, beautiful mezuzot, and I'll give it to these 3 doctors. So he went to California, and he visited with each one of these doctors, and for each doctor he gave this beautiful mezuzah. Each doctor had a different reaction to it. The first one, didn't pay attention to it. And he gave it back to the rabbi. He said, Rabbi, please, I don't want to embarrass you, but this means nothing to me. I don't want this mezuzah at all. He says, the second one says, I'm not going to, turn you down. I appreciate this gift, but look, there's no way I'm going to put it on my door. I'll take it from you. Thank you very much, but I'm not going to put it at my door. The third one was so excited by it that he took it, he kissed it, and right away he asked the rabbi to come with him and to put it on his door. So we see that he went to 3 influential doctors in California. Each one had a different reaction to his gift. One of them turned him down. He says, these are not the type of gifts that I'm looking for. I'm not into these types of things. I don't believe in them. The other one was, listen, it's not my thing. I'll take it, but I'm not going to put it in my door. And the other one was really excited about it, and he put it up right away. Not too long after, something of a freak weather incident happened where there was actually a hurricane in Los Angeles. And these 3 doctors happened to live right next to each other. Right next to each other. And feet away from each other, in other words. And after the hurricane, something very, very interesting happened. The doctor, the first one that turned down the rabbi's gift of the mezuzah, his house got completely destroyed. Nothing was left of it. Not one thing was left of that house. Right next door to him was the second doctor. His house was damaged, but not to the point like the first doctor. He had some damage, but some repairs will bring it right back. And the third doctor, who was also just right next to them, because they all lived in the same neighborhood, nothing happened to his house. Not one thing. We see over here an incredible story of Shomer Dlatot Yisrael. Hashem protects the doors of Am Yisrael. How important to have the protection of a mezuzah. As a matter of fact, since we're speaking about a home and we're talking about having a mezuzah in the house for Shalom Bayit, maybe we could say something else. There was the mezuzah. The Gemara talks about the placement of the mezuzah. What's the right way to do it? Do you do it upright or diagonal or horizontal? It's a machloka between Rashi and his grandson, Rabbeinu Tam. And each one holds of a different opinion. And we see that nowadays the Sephardics still do it straight, but the majority of people in the world actually put the mezuzah not straight up, but on a slant. And why on a slant? It's one of the few places in halakha that actually we don't go according to one opinion or another, but a compromise. Meaning, Rashi says straight, Rabbeinu Tam says diagonal, and they came to the compromise, let's do it in between. We do it straight. Now, why is that interesting? Because when you come into the house and you see that the mezuzah is diagonal, you have to think of what? You have to think of the halakha of the mezuzah. One was leaning towards straight, the other one horizontal, the other one was leaning towards diagonal, and they came to a compromise, they put it in between. So like that, when you open up the door to your house, you understand that what? In the house, it's all about compromise. And that, kiss it with your hand? Yes, it's a way of, it's a chibuv mitzvah. That when you come into the house, it's a compromise. It's not the husband, it's not the wife, you have to come to the middle ground, and that's how, A house is always not when you hold on to one side and the other one holds on to the other side. Rather, when both of you come to the middle and make a compromise. And the tilting of the mezuzah hints to that as well. They hold their ground. So we see the mezuzah protects you at home, protects you outside of the house. It protects you from mazikin, protects you from the mashchit. It offers you long life, children, long life to the children, and even the mitzvah of Eretz Yisrael, of living in Eretz Yisrael. It reminds you of Hashem's greatness every time that you look at it. But in order to activate this, we said you have to have the intention, the kavanah. Everything that we learned today, go to the mezuzah and activate those words, activate those pesukim, activate those thoughts. That activates the protection. But if you're just walking by it and you just touching it and go, at least in the morning or at least at night, when you start your day, have the kavanah. Or when you come home at night, have that kavanah to activate the powers that are instilled within it. We also have a custom when we come to shul, that when we come to shul, we stop by the mezuzah and we put our hand on it and say, "Vani b'rov chazdecha, avo betecha, ishtachaveh lechal kodshecha biratecha." That's another pasuk that you can say. There's a special pasuk that people say when they come into shul, and there's a lot of secrets over there. Maybe in a different class about tefillah, we can unravel that. But there is the mentioning over there of Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Each part of the pasuk corresponds to each one of them, and that we come to Hashem, that we come to the place of worship, Beir'am. Also, there's Hashem that Hashem should bless you when you are going out and when you're coming out from now on forevermore. Or a lot of people put their hands on the mezuzah saying, Hashem yivarech oti v'yiten li rachamim, Hashem bless me and have mercy upon me. You're going outside into the world. It's good to activate tefillah, activate the protection. There's one other story that I heard about Onkelos. That was very, very interesting. If you know Onkelos is the Aramaic translation that we have in most Chumashim on the left. You see, we have the Hebrew, Rashi, and on the left is Onkelos. Onkelos is a convert. Onkelos has also an interesting part. He was part of the royal family. I think it was Titus who was his father-in-law. That when the time came and he got older, he told him, he asked him, Onkelos came to him and asked him for advice. He asked him, what should I do? I want to go out there into the world. What advice can you give me? He says, well, if you see something that is right now very low in the world, that people are not paying attention to it, and there's an abundance of it, purchase it, buy it, and later on, when it becomes expensive again, that's when you sell. So go take something that is very lowly, acquire it, buy the tons of it, and later on you could turn it into a very large profit. Okay, Onkelos went into the world and ended up being that he converted to Judaism. So his uncle was, he says, like, I thought he was going to go into the business world. I thought he was going to become a merchant, or, he doesn't even need that. He can, he can give him all the money in the world if he wants to. So he sent one of his officers, and he told him, go bring me Onkelos, I want to speak to him. So Onkelos did not want to go over there, but when the soldiers were there, he started to give them a drush. He says, so they started to ask him. He started to talk to them about the Torah. So he says, I'll give you a parable. He says, if you have a sergeant, and then you have what's higher than a sergeant? A general, right? Or let's just say you have a king. Or let's say you have a king and you have the treasurer, and they're out there in the forest, right? And they have a lantern. Who do you think should be holding the lantern to light the way? The king or the treasurer? The treasurer, because he's lowering a rank than the king, right? He says, look at this, the Jewish people, when they were in the desert, who was lighting the way for them and showing them the way? God, Ba'amud Esh. He says, look at this. Instead of them creating the light in order for them to have for themselves, God himself went in front of them and lit the way for them. They were so impressed with this chidush that they converted and they never went back to the king. After that, the king sent another group of people to him. And once again, he gave them some sort of chidush. They converted, they stayed with him also. This time he says, you know what, I don't know what's going on over there with Unkulus, but don't ask him any questions, because if you ask him any questions, he's going to convert you. Just bring him straight to me. So when they came to him, they said, listen, we don't want to hear you. Just come with us to the king. So when he stepped outside, he kissed the mezuzah, and his face just washed over with happiness and a smile, and he kissed it. So they were very, very curious. They said, what is it that you're doing right now? What is it that you are, what made you so happy just by kissing the mezuzah? He says, it's incredible. I'm in here, living my life, and the king of the world is standing outside the door protecting me. And now I'm going to go anywhere that you want to take me to, and this protection continues with me. They were so blown away, they converted as well. We see that the mezuzah has such an incredible power that even Onkelos used it as a way to connect to Judaism and to turn other people onto it. Hashem barich otchem, v'sameach otchem, and Be'ezat Hashem that we can be able to do two things from this week's parasha. Three things. One, don't glance over every pasuk. Over one pasuk, we're able to talk an hour now about the greatness of a mezuzah. Secondly, know that the mezuzah has incredible amount of segulot and powers. Activate them. If you have just that, before you leave the house in the morning, find the pasuk that resonates with you. Find the thing that makes you understand that Hashem rules the world, that Hashem is protecting you. If you haven't checked your mezuzot, check them again to make sure that you have protection in every single room and every single entranceway. And then the third thing that we understand is that we need to have kavanot. There has to be a kavanah in everything that we do. Even though that we become robotic in our service of Hashem, in our tefillah, in our learning, in our interaction, in our mitzvot, it's time to maybe rethink the way we go about things and maybe try to have a little bit more kavanot. Even once or twice or three times a day, take the time out to say a bracha b'kavanah, tefillah b'kavanah, the kissing of the mezuzah b'kavanah. It will change our service and our connection to Hashem. Shabbat shalom.